This ASAP podcast is brought to you by the Bill Jacobs Power Company. They'll help you to design your athletic and fitness facility from the bottom up. Coach Jake is shipping bands every day. He's got the 10-pound band, the 100-pound band, and everything in between. He's got them all. And of course, during these special times, he also has the scientifically superior surface protection. It's called System 3 SDP. Sanitize, disinfect, protect. He's got the TRX med balls, the rollers, ropes, bumpers, benches. Coach Jake has it all. www.coachbilljacobs.com. This is Ed Cicale with Athletic Strength and Power Podcasts. And in the background, that's Bronson Arroyo, the former Cincinnati Red baseball star. You saw him in the World Series with the Boston Red Sox, and here we are back in Kentucky. He lives in northern Kentucky area, one of his palatial homes. And Bronson Arroyo, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Bronson, welcome to the podcast. We touched base a long time ago with some of the podcasts we did from Great American Ballpark and watching you pitch for the Reds. What the heck have you been up to?
Well, we used to do those old podcasts with Matt Krause, the strength coach of the Reds, and he's with the Yankees for the last 5 years, I think. And I just saw him out in Los Angeles. The Yankees were in town playing the Dodgers, and I just came from there. But I've been, since I retired 2 years ago, I've been playing in a band around Cincinnati, playing a bunch of cover music. I've been writing original music for a different band out in Los Angeles. Been playing a lot of golf and snow skiing in the winter. So I've just been trying to catch up with friends and family and do things that, turn me on, that just keep me excited about life.
Tell us about, it's been about a year and a half since you've been in the big leagues?
Yeah, I retired at the end of 2017, so this is going to be the second full season.
Tell us a little bit about, just kind of remind our fans, some of the stops you had along the way.
Yeah, so I was drafted by the Pirates in 1995 out of high school. Played for 22 years, so I go from 1995 through 2017. So I was 18 to 40 years old, and first 8 years are with the Pirates, mostly in the minor leagues, about a year and a half in the major league level. Then I get picked up by the Boston Red Sox off the waiver wire. Theo Epstein, who now is the president of the Cubs, claimed me off the waiver wire with Boston. I start in AAA that year, finally get called up to the big leagues in August after throwing a perfect game in Pawtucket. The fourth perfect game in the history of a 130-year league in the International League. And then I stayed with the Red Sox over the next 3 seasons, won a World Series in 2004. And then in 2006, they traded me to the Cincinnati Reds for Willie Mo Pena, a straight-up one-on-one trade, which was pretty lopsided by the end of just that one season, much less the next decade to follow. But come to the Reds, stay here for 8 seasons, give the Reds 105 wins in those 8 seasons, never missed a start. Went to Arizona Diamondbacks for the next 2. Finally broke down as a player. Had Tommy John surgery on my elbow. I had my rotator cuff sewn back together, and that took me 2.5 years to come back from. And I finally came back in 2017. Gave the Reds 14 starts, and my shoulder was just not going to hold up anymore.
Elbow too?
Elbow was feeling okay. I could have grinded through that, but the shoulder was kind of the power mover, and it wouldn't take it would allow me to pitch 1 game, but it wouldn't allow me to turn it back around in 4 days rest. I would have needed like 10 days rest in order to pitch again, and that's just something you can't. You're not of value to a big league ball club if you can't turn it around every 5th day. Back
when you were with the Reds, you were fiddling around with a little bit of guitar, and you even did some sort of a commercial with out of the dugout of the Reds, I think.
We were laughing about that commercial the other day because I've been playing golf with Chris Welsh around town. And he was the other guy in the commercial back then, and he had that Tom Selleck mustache back then. And it was a funny commercial, the JTM commercials for the meat company. And I sang all the vocals on that stuff, and we did those commercials. And to this day, I actually hadn't watched them since we filmed them until 2017. And I started watching them back for fun on YouTube, and I was just belly laughing. They were so funny. And I asked Welsh if he had been watching them over the years, and he said, yeah, he had seen them quite a few times. But that was a fun time.
And, I've been listening to some of your demo tapes. I've been listening to you live, crank out a few on that Taylor acoustic you got. And you've upped your game. I mean, this is, tell us a little bit about this music thing you've got going.
Yeah, I'm taking it a little bit more serious now that I have a little bit more time. And, I've always loved playing music, But when you're strapped to a Major League Baseball locker room, people don't realize that it's almost year round. I mean, October would be the only time if we were not in the playoffs that I would take 30 days off of the weight room and from playing catch. And then you're right back at it. At least I was on November 1st. And then you continue that all the way until, through the next September. So it's almost a year-round project to keep your body in shape and to stay focused on the game. So I got to play music over the years, but not as seriously as I would have wanted had I had a little bit more free time. And now that I have that time, I've been playing in a band around Cincinnati, just called the Bronson Arroyo Band. And we play charity events sometimes. Sometimes we play at great places like Bogart's and just put on a 2-hour show. That stuff is everything from the Beatles, Tom Petty, to Oasis, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots. We just play a lot of cover songs. But in the meantime, I've also been writing original music for the first time ever, and I've got some friends that I met out in they're from Los Angeles. They were all New England boys when I met them when I was with the Red Sox. And so I really enjoyed playing music with these guys once in a while, and I always said I was going to write a record with them. So we're in the midst of I've got 21 original songs that I wrote over the last year, and I've given them to them, and we're going to rank them in order and probably pick 10 to 12 of them and try to make an album here in mid-September. And I don't have any expectations of what will happen to it. I just know that before I die, I needed a record that I could put down on a player and drop the needle down and say, I made that.
I hear you. Oh, you talking vinyl to an old school guy.
Absolutely.
We're down here in your, we'll call it your recording studio almost. You've written some songs. That's got to take some talent. You really got to apply yourself to write a song. What's that all about?
Yeah, I think, over the years, I wrote a few little jingles for my parents or some songs over the years, but it was usually in a moment when something would hit you, someone would die, or, something would happen and you would write a handful of songs over 20 years. But then I started thinking, how are you going to continue to put out music if you can't wait for those moments? I don't feel like. So I wanted to try to conjure up an idea of how I was going to write music without having something so personal happen to me. And so I just started taking riffs from the guys in the band or stuff that I had tooled around with on a guitar and just taking them over to a buddy's house. There's a kid named Chris Lambert. They call him CJ Lambert around town here. And also Elliot Sloan from Blessed Union of Souls. I usually sit with those two guys about once a week, and I try to finish a song, and it usually takes us 4 hours. I bring the idea. I bring the chord arrangement for the most part, at least for the verses, maybe not the chorus. And I have an idea of what I want to write the song about, maybe some certain subject that I observed from the outside, and we just get after it. And, it's a very pleasing feeling to go home at night and listen back to something you did in 4 hours and be like, wow, we put in some work today. And so I just have continued to do that one after another. And then I take the songs out to the guys in LA and say, what do you think? And they say, man, you've been putting in some serious work here, man. You're finishing these songs. And so it's been fun to be able to produce like that and just have something feel like an accomplishment.
So we got a guy that's written 21 songs. He's got them down, and to go with that, you've played in actually how many games in the big leagues?
Oh, I don't know how many games. Well, I pitched. Well, I know I pitched 369 straight games without missing a start. Where a full season for a major league starter is 32 to 34 starts. These days, sometimes only 30. So I basically went 19 and a half seasons without missing a game. And most guys can't make it through one season without missing a game. And so I did that. I also had a little bit of bullpen time when I was with the Red Sox and with the Pirates. And so I stayed healthy throughout that. 2014 is when I got hurt with the Diamondbacks, and that was the first time I was on the disabled list ever. And that really is what made me who I was in the game, was the consistency of giving you 200 innings a year for almost a decade straight. And every fifth day, they just knew that Bronson Arroyo was going to be out on the mound and have the ball in his hand, and he was going to give us a chance, hopefully, to win 2 out of every 3 times. And so, it was a fabulous grind to have in life, to think about how are you going to survive in this game, not only from a performance level, but from a health standpoint. And I really enjoyed being in the weight room every day and trying to find ways to stay healthy inside of a game that just seems to spit guys out constantly.
Well, that's what leads us to Athletic Strength and Power podcasts. With that brilliant career that you had in the bigs, absolutely, it took a lot of work, and you had to just hone your body in all the time. That's why we want to have podcasts with you and videos and talk to you about what it was that kept you in the bigs that long, and like you said, not missing starts and all those innings every year. And then you're big into nutrition too.
Yeah, and I think I had a little bit of a head start, and I think what the real magic that came from me was the ability to day in and day out not be mentally tired from the grind that we were going to have to face. And part of that was the fact that at a very, very young age, and I'm talking back to 6 years old, I was in the weight room with my father, which I'm sure we probably talked about before. And he got me lifting weights, and it wasn't so much of how much weight we were pushing. Well, we were pushing a lot of weight, but it was more about a mental foundation. I think about that. This is going to be a task at hand that's going to be on the daily. This isn't going to be something that we're just going to do for 3 months and we're going to put down for 6 months. This is something that even when you're playing basketball and playing football, we are going to be thinking about baseball. And so that was kind of bred into me. And so I think the main thing about getting guys to be healthy is to build that mental foundation and then the physical foundation just after that, just to tell your body this is what we will be doing. And I think if guys can do that, the earlier the better. It gives them an opportunity to play the game longer as they get older, because we're all going to slowly break down, right? I mean, biology just tells us that there's just no way to compete at the highest of levels with the most weight, forever.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Right, it's going to happen. But in order to stave that off a little bit and hopefully push the timeline back a little bit, I think if your body is so used to you doing certain things to it over a 10, 20-year period, then I think it can weather the storm of some injuries a little bit easier than some other guys.
Yeah, and then here you are, a year and a half out of the bigs, and you're still hitting it, 3-4 times a week with the weights? And
yeah, I'm still doing stuff all the time. Down here in the basement, I've got a recumbent bike, and I've got a TRX band and a set of 50 dumbbells with a Swiss ball, and I still like to do some stuff. But when you're playing music and I'm playing golf a lot, sometimes I'll take, a 3-hour session of singing, and I'll consider that my workout for the day. But at least 3 or 4 days a week, I'm down here, I'm doing push-ups, I'm doing, just enough to stay active. I really just believe that, if you don't do anything at all, you just slowly just kind of disappear. And I feel, I was having a conversation the other day with somebody who knew Clint Eastwood, and he was talking about how, he was saying, don't let the old man in that one movie where he was, he's getting older, and he's basically saying, I refuse to feel like an old man mentally and physically. I'm just going to keep pushing that away from me. And so I feel the same way. I'm 42 years old, and I still, bounce around like I'm 20. And I think I can still do that for the next 15 or 20 years as long as you keep the machine moving. And so for me, it is very important to constantly just do something, even if it's not heavy. It doesn't have to be heavy. And as the older you get, I actually think you probably should be tapering back on weights, because you don't want to have a situation where, I used to curl heavy, but now you just rip the bicep off the bone, so you can back the weight down a little bit, but continue to push your volume up to pump blood. I feel like that is the main life force we've got to kind of heal the body, is to keep that blood moving. And so whether it's you're playing racquetball or going to the gym and doing some stuff, I think it's all good.
Just to enlighten us in today's podcast, when you were in the big leagues and when you were in training, as this right during the season, how many times a week, or what was it like, if you could just tell us, when you actually lifted weights or when you went out and ran, and how your program was put together during the season?
Right. It morphed a little bit over the years, depending on how I was feeling. But most years, early on, it was always pitch, let's say on Monday. On Tuesday, we would get after a pretty heavy leg workout, and that would also be your long running day. So your legs were absolutely blasted that day. Then I would usually do an upper body on day 2, which would a lot of times consist of, for me, it was even dips, where a lot of guys weren't doing that, but I was doing a little bit of dips. You're doing pull-ups. We're doing, overhead press a little bit. I was doing some stuff that maybe other guys weren't necessarily doing, but I've been in the weight room a long time, and I was always healthy, so they would kind of give me a little bit more leeway. But we weren't deadlifting heavy, and we weren't squatting super heavy. If we went heavy with legs, a lot of times we'd squat some, but we'd all try to tack most of the weight onto the leg press, just to give the back a little bit of a breather after pitching all those innings. And then there would be shorter running days on maybe day 3 and day 4. You're getting some shorter running days where you're running more sprints as your volume of throwing is going up into that, where you're throwing your bullpen on day 3 or day 4. And then you're taking a rest day, and then you're back out on the mound. As years went on, and my body was breaking down a little bit more, and it was harder to get the soreness out, and I'm talking like 35, 36, 37, then I started taking the first day off. So I'd pitch on a Monday, I would take Tuesday off, and I would get a massage, I'd get in the hot tub and the cold tub, we'd contrast. Maybe we would be doing acupuncture possibly. Whatever was going on that you felt like you could get your body to recover those are the things we were doing on day one. And then on day two, we'd stick in the legs. And then on day three, it'd be the upper body. And inside of both of those workouts would always be some sort of a shoulder program. So, for a pitcher, the most important thing was to keep the capsule around the rotator cuff strong. And so that was always kind of the number one priority. You're hitting the legs and the upper body, but in the middle of that, there's always a kind of an underlying thread of shoulder work and forearm work and elbow work to try to keep, the main component, the power mover for a starter, trying to keep that strong so that you didn't have any injuries.
Now, Bronson, you did a lot with the band work too, didn't you? As far as the not the rock band that you're into,
Right.
but the bands that were in the weight room.
Yeah, talking about the tubing. So it would be kind of a mixture. So there were some things you could do with a 2-pound dumbbell that you could replicate what you would be doing with a tube or a band, as you said. And you'd kind of just mix and match it. There would be days when I loved actually the day before I pitched. This was a little unorthodox, but the day before I would pitch, I called it a tightening program. I'd love to be in the weight room. My body was a little gangly and loose. I was always a skinny guy, and I felt like I wanted to feel my hips and my shoulders be a little more snug when I went out there on game day. And so if I had too much time off, it almost felt like I was too loose, too Gumby-ish. So I would go in there and I would do a bunch of different exercises, but very light, and just pump some blood. And whether it was doing some jump rope and you maybe doing some leg press, doing some lat pull downs, a little bit of forearm work, some of the tubing for my shoulder, just kind of like putting some blood in all these parts of my body so the next day, hopefully I would feel a little snug out on the mound. It always made the ball feel like it was coming out of my hand a little bit better, and it made me feel a little bit stronger. And so I always had that in my program, but the shoulder stuff, there's so many different ways to do it. I mean, you can also swim. Sometimes if certain things were going on, maybe I wasn't feeling so hot, I'd get in a swim X, which would be pushing a wave against you, and you'd be swimming against the wave. And I would just use that as part of my lat workout to flush some of that soreness out, or some of the shoulder work I'd be getting done in the water. So there's a lot of different ways to work that rotator cuff and what a pitcher needs. And you're trying to blend those because also it's a long season. And if you're doing the same things all the time, not only does your body get used to it, but your mind gets a little tired of it. And so just kind of be able to move the ball around a little bit keeps it fresh.
So when you were out of town, when the Reds went on the road, you found a place to train, or did the coaches, create a place in the hotel, or what was it like on the road?
No, on the road these days, the amenities have gotten a lot better than they used to be. If you were in the minor leagues, you would have to go out. Usually the head trainer would take a group of guys to a local gym and would pay, or maybe they had, bartered for a deal or whatever, and we would go in there, work out in the morning, and go to lunch and come back to the hotel. At the big league level, that doesn't happen. Every major league stadium is now mandatory that they have a visiting weight room for all the players. So, but that being said, there are some older stadiums like Wrigley Field that you're very limited in what you have, right? Because some of these old stadiums, they just don't have enough room to give you a nice, beautiful weight room as they do, let's say, like in Pittsburgh. You go into Pittsburgh's weight room and it's kind of small, but you go to some other places and you'll have a beautiful place to do whatever you want. So, I used to call it a jailhouse workout when we were playing in some of the old stadiums, and you had to invent some things. And so you might have a set of dumbbells and a stationary bike and a TRX band and only a couple little things in some of the old ballparks. And you'd just find a way to have this jailhouse workout and get what you needed to get done inside of that. And that made, it made it fun sometimes. Sometimes, you'd really wanted to get a great leg workout, and you could be in Wrigley and be disappointed, that you had to go to the stadium for a day game on a Thursday because they weren't playing any night games without the lights, and that you had to try to muster up this workout early in the day with, no equipment. And sometimes it can be a little frustrating, but most of the time it was fun to try to invent something, feel like you got that work in, and get back out on the mound.
Well, Bronson, we really wanted to reconnect and touch base with you again, and we're going to try to get this thing rolling with some regular podcasts to talk baseball with you, and talk nutrition with you, and talk about your music more often, and get together. But today, just to refresh all our podcasts, we're nationwide at Athletic Strength and Power. We're well known, and we want to really up our baseball, training and knowledge for the athletes out there. So Bronson Arroyo, we really extend a big thank you today for joining us for this Athletic Strength and Power podcast. Thanks a lot, Bronson.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on again, Ed.